Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Ball and a Chance. I'm your host, Angela Lewis, and today's guest is Drew Davis. Drew is a keynote speaker, a certified coach, an NFL legend whose work centers on leadership, adversity, and peak performance, his L.A.P framework. Drew was born and raised in Denver, earned a 4.0 and 26 Division I scholarship offers. He starred at the University of Oregon, helping lead the Ducks to back-to-back Pac-10 titles, which is amazing, and their first national championship appearance. He went on to play 4 seasons for the Atlanta Falcons, serving as special teams captain and respected locker room leader. Today, Drew works with athletes and high-performing leaders and students to help them overcome adversity and perform at their best. Please welcome Drew Davis. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for just having me on your very first episode. So I can't wait to get my prize in the mail for whatever that is for being that guest. But it's definitely my pleasure being here, Angela.
Yes, your prize will be in the mail. And thank you for inviting me on the Too Good to Be Drew podcast. We cannot forget about that. So that conversation led to this conversation, and I'm grateful that you invited me on there as well.
We got to keep good people around to kind of continue to bring that value.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in it. Will you talk about the L.A.P framework and the work you're doing now as a life coach and keynote speaker?
Yeah, the lab framework, I was when I was crossing over into being a kind of public speaker and a coach, the framework or just having framework for me was the most daunting thing or the thing that I just couldn't nail down for the most part. But that as I look back at my story, it's been a lot of it's based on leadership, adversity, and peak performance. Leadership is just a position I've always been super comfortable with the mentoring that I've gotten from my mentors and the mentoring that I do now. And then adversity, if you play sports and you're in this thing called life, you know about adversity. Sports is more so an injury, coming fighting back, trying to get a starting spot, or transferring schools, or not seeing eye to eye with the coach, things like that. And you got to overcome adversity for the path and the journey to be worth it. And then also just peak performance. I just have a background in psychology. Did a lot of things in and around with my athletes and high performing individuals. So just working on things like self talk, imagery, visualization, a whole bunch of things like that that can help people perform better in their sport, in their job, in their career, and then also at home. So it's just me taking an amalgamation of things that I've learned over time and being able to apply it for each situation when I'm in with my clients.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that. And you mentioned these things that you learned from sport. So now that we know what you're doing now, let's take a step back and let's unpack leadership. Leadership is a system. Like leaders have systems to in order to be effective leaders. So can you talk a little bit about the things that you did specifically that helped you become a leader and how you teach that to your clients?
Peace. I would always been the leader, the person that led by example. I know there's vocal leaders, there's people that lead by example. I can show you better than I can tell you. And we have to be comfortable knowing which type of leader we can be or develop or kind of to grow into. And for me, I was just always a person that you knew that you can count on, the person that was dependable. You knew I was going to be there in the morning, you know I was going to be there in the evening, I was going to be the first person there, probably the last person to leave. And it's just a mix of just everything I saw from the people around me. My mom and dad got up and went to work every day, whether they were sick, whether they were hurting. I can probably count on one hand the times I saw my mom call in to work. And so I get that work ethic from her. But just outside of leadership, it's more so not about talent, but like how do you bring out the best in other people around you? How do you hold them accountable? What do you do for them to look at you and say, you know what, like whatever Drew's doing, I want to do that as well. So just this whole mix of just, how do I become the best player that I want to be, while also being able to lead my teammates into battle or into practice or those hot summer days when nobody wants to be there. How are you that kind of shining light for other people that they can get behind you and galvanized around you from the way that you show up every day? And then also just the words that you pour into them as well. Are you somebody who brings harmful language, anytime you come around to the point people are afraid to mess up and make mistakes? Or are you that person that's going to give somebody, a pat on the ass or a pat on the head and tell them, hey, good job. Hey, don't worry about it, man. We'll get the next one. All that types of stuff matter in these kind of elements. And so I just try to do my best to bring the best that will pull the most productive player, person, whatever it might be out of somebody so that they can perform their best in that situation.
I love that. You hit on a few points. And so I wanted to circle back. What do you think are, you say, the top five components of leadership? You mentioned bringing the best out of other people. So seeing how others can get better. But can you give us kind of a few tips for those who are leaders to kind of self check and say, "Oh, am I doing this well, or can I do this better?"
Mm. One thing I do with everybody I sit down that I talk about leadership with is I have everyone write out a definition. And because I think some people think of leadership, like I said, as one thing, there's other people, there's a myth or there's kind of just this perception as far as like leadership has to be loud, it has to be vocal. I remember a couple years ago, a quarterback from Oregon, he was coming out in the draft, and one of the knocks on him was that he doesn't talk that much. And they were trying to say that knocks him down a peg, and he's gone into the NFL and done some very, very great things. But I say you have to define what leadership is. And then when you look up the definition of leadership, I do know it by heart, but I'm not going to remember it right now. But one of the biggest things I point to in that is it says the ability. It doesn't say anything about what you have to have right now or what you should be pegged as or anything like that. It says the ability. And I believe that everyone has the ability to lead in some way, shape, or form. We wake up every day and we lead ourselves, So to think that we can't lead other people for us is not just giving ourselves enough credit and not really thinking we're not really being confident in our ability to do so. But if I just had to name a couple of things, I would say a lot of it's just how you show up. Are you the same example of the things that you preach about everyone else doing or having? There's nothing worse than seeing somebody in a leadership position that talks about staying late or giving it your all or giving it your best, and you kind of see them sneaking out the side door when the work is getting hard, or they just don't have boots on the ground just like you do. And so that's probably the biggest one for me is just how are you showing up in these spaces for other people? Are you mirroring what you're talking about when you talk about leadership and you talk about those things from a managerial or just a higher up position? And then the second one, just when it comes to leadership, just do you know the people around you? Do you know the people that are working for you? Do you know the people that are beside you? Do you know more than just their jersey number and what their stats are and what they did for you business wise as far as data? Do you know their kids' names? Do you know their wife or husband's names? Do you know where they live? Do you know what car they drive? Do you know what music they like? Part of being a leader is really kind of digging into people and being curious and staying curious about them, not in an overstepping your boundary way, but it's just I care about you more than just a teammate. I care about you more than just my coworker or a person that's under me. I care about you as a person because when we do that, when we kind of develop these relationships that are more built from genuine, concern and genuine
Mhm.
questioning, we get better results because people know, hey, this person really, really cares about me. So they just don't care about the bottom line, the money that we're bringing in. They asked me how I was doing after I missed a week of work because I was sick. So do you notice those things as a leader, or do you kind of just have your heads too far in the clouds, or kind of those things fly under the radar?
No, that's really important. Relationships is what you're speaking to. There's a saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So showing genuine care at the most fundamental level is important to leadership, and integrity is what you're speaking to as well. Do your actions follow what you say? Are you doing what you say that you do or what you believe? Because your actions will determine how people perceive you beyond what you say.
Correct.
So talk about being a life coach, and how did that come about? And so there are some, I think I ask that because the natural progression for a lot of players is coaching. And often that's on the field, and you've coached on the field. But how did that transfer into what you're doing now?
It was kind of funny because I did start out coaching, and I knew once I finished football that I didn't really want to coach at a high level. One day I had a coach tell me in the NFL, I'm gonna get you fired before I get me fired. And that's kind of when I came to more of a realization, like, we knew it's cutthroat, but it was also just like, man, I don't want to live my life, based upon the performance of someone else or afraid for what someone else has to do in order for me to keep my job. And it's also not in my personality to say something like that. And I know there are great coaches around there. But I got into coaching to kind of get a jump on my master's degree and in my secondary education. But just being around sports, I always, like I said, talk about relationships. I know that athletes are more multifaceted than what other people view them as. And so I loved being around my athletes when I worked at UCLA and asking them out questions outside of football, like, hey, what classes are you taking? Okay, hey, what did you do this weekend? Oh, you went to the museum, you took photos. I didn't know you're a photographer. Do you let me see some of your work? Like, and to see how they lit up when you asked about things outside of their sport, when you asked about their family, when you saw them at community service events and you saw how good they were playing with kids, and then you find out that they have 22 cousins and they're the biggest cousin, and so they're the person that everybody looks up to. All that stuff is really brings things into perspective for how I build out community service then, or who I knew for the right people to put into different places. But when I thought about a job and a work and what work was when I was leaving UCLA at the time, I was like, man, so I'm going to acting school. That's a full-time gig. Like, what can I do to supplement my income? And I always thought about being a coach, but I had never like really delved into it and kind of researched it. And so as this was getting more real for me, I went and got certified. And then I also just looked at my background and was like, yo, I already do this when I was a director of player development at UCLA, like really checking in on guys, using powerful questioning, not pretty much giving them advice all the time, but helping them find the answers. So I was like, oh, I'm already doing this. Like I'm kind of, three-fourths of the way in the door. And for me, it was just a way to do something that I loved, to do something where I'm helping people, because that's what I'm really big on. I selfishly love to see people reach their own goals. I selfishly love people to realize that they are worthy enough to get there, and that really helps power me, and it's what I'm passionate about because I had people that helped me realize that as well. And so as I was on this path to becoming a coach, I just know that there's so many people out there that need a coach. And you also being a former athlete like me, one day you go from having a coach and being able to have a coach for 10, 15, 20 years to all of a sudden it goes cold turkey and you're out here trying to figure out life by yourself. So all those coaches that you had, it was somebody that would wake you up or to check on you when you missed a practice or a game or you were injured. And then now you leave these systems, and you'd be lucky if you hear from your college position coach maybe one time in 1 or 2 or 3 years when you leave them. And it's not their fault; they got other people to coach. But how do you go from an environment where you've always had somebody telling you what you need to work on, what you're doing good, your maturation point, to all of a sudden going cold turkey and waking up and having absolutely nothing to be accountable for? And so for me, it's a way to help my athletes where I still challenge them and get them kind of, I know how to push their buttons a little bit and get them off that couch or get them to a workout or get them to work on their business plan that they've been talking about for 6 months. And so that part of me still really burns with desire, helping people to find what they're passionate about, and then also giving them that support that they can go chase what they want to. Awesome. I love because this is part of my story when I talk about adversity. When I was at the University of Oregon, I actually found a Theater 101 class that I really, really loved. And I thought I was going to major in theater arts. And I had kind of bopped around from sociology to FHS major, family human services, and didn't really like either of those. And I got in this acting class and found out we had a theater arts major at school. I'm like, all right, bet, I'll do this. And I decided to tell my dad for some reason, and we don't have a really great relationship. He's Ghanaian, he's African, all about education. They don't care about nothing else. And he kind of scolded me for like wanting to waste my degree on going and getting in theater arts. So it's something that I passed up in college, that I really wanted to do that I just didn't get to dive into. And one big thing I talk about when I do my speeches or just keynote speaking is I talk about regret. And there's a quote that I read a long time ago that said, the people that regret not doing something usually were good enough to do it. And so that quote has stayed with me for about 15 years. And so by this time, it was 10 years, by the time I was at UCLA and I came up with this opportunity. I didn't have any kids, didn't have a girlfriend, like, I had a solid career, but I was like, if I don't do this acting thing now, then I never will. This is the best time for me to do it. I'm leaving almost a six-figure job to go do it, which I'm uncomfortable with as well because I'm really risk adverse. If I don't know I'm getting a certain payoff or something, I can't just jump into it. But it was something I had to do because I didn't want to be that 40 or 50 or 60-year-old man that's like, man, I could have been on the screen with Denzel, but my dad held me back. I didn't want to be one of those people that's like, man, I would have made it to the NFL if it wasn't for my coach. Like, nah, bro, you was because of you a little bit. Don't act like it's just on your coach. And so for me, it was just taking that leap of faith. And how was I going to become a coach and help people chase their dreams and passions if I didn't even chase my dream and passion? And so as I talk about acting school, I was totally a fish out of water doing it. We see what's on movies and we think we know what acting is, but I'm going there with people that really knew how to act too. They're not just sitting there regurgitating what they saw on screen or a performance. They're really building out a character. They're really going through all these steps, doing all the research, all this kind of stuff. So to be honest, I was horrible for probably like three-fourths of acting school. Couldn't remember my lines, just was too afraid to make choices, like a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm not gonna sit here and act like I went in there and I was the next Denzel. But through that time frame, and the thing that I had problems with, and I think a lot of athletes will agree with me or anybody that ends up going and taking some acting classes, is that for a sport, you always have a coach to tell you like it kind of exactly what you need to do. They'll be like, "Yo, don't do that. Do take one step here, take one step there. If that's not there, pass the ball out here, and then go." Like they always tell you what to do, or there's like rules, confined rules that you need to do. Acting is that way, but it's a little bit of improv. It's more so like you have to make choices, and you have to make choices that are in line with what your character would do. So you have to check yourself at the door. You have to do all this work for whether if it's the time period, whether if it's the environment or the life your character grew up with, and you have to bring those to each scene every time. And with that, it's talking about just like practice. We go to practice so much that we get to play in the game, and it's because we've gone through it so many times. With acting, you guys perform and rehearse it so much that you got to make it fresh. Like you're not just sitting there and just going through the motions with it. Like you're really trying to figure out how do we make this scene? How do we find the beats here? How do I make okay, I was high on this part the other time we did it. Let me try being lower over here to see how my partner reacts to it. And so for me, I was a fish out of water, but being an athlete helped me so much because as I was struggling and I wasn't that good, or I was just second guessing myself and having a lot of self-doubt, I started to do what I did in football, and that was like study everybody else in my class. When other people got up to perform for their scene, I watched their scene with a critical eye, and I was like, "Well, he did this differently last time, or last time he did this. Why did he change doing that? Oh, that was very smart. Last week he did this and walked over there, but this time he stayed there. So that made me feel so like I started really breaking it down analyst wise, analyzing it. And when I did that, it started to help me get clearer and more confident with the choices I was making in my scenes. And I started to take more risk. I started to do things that I didn't know how they were going to land, like in a good way. Which, if you say that in the sports world, they're like, no, don't improv, don't do your own thing, don't get off script, like do what we tell you, and we're going to do okay. But I met a lot of great actors. I had some very great teachers that instilled confidence in me to kind of hold the stage and to kind of take up space, but to also not shy away from my life as an athlete and as a football player, and use those experiences to come alive on stage and give a performance that's worthy of high recognition. So acting school for me was definitely a journey for a year and a half. But I can say that the things that I gained from acting school, I use in my coaching sessions with my clients, and then also when I get on stages to do keynotes as well. Mhm. And I'm gonna give you kudos, like I said, for doing it. There's some people that are so they freeze and they freeze up from the thought of doing something different that they never do it. And so you can at least say you did it for the exposure, for the difference of it. And then also I'm sure you came out of there learning stuff, but you also learned like this pivoting and heels ain't for me. So you did learn something great. I had a lot of help. Like we came up with this master plan, and I had my window shrunk even more because as I looked at my career in high school, it got to almost my senior year, and my me and my coach and my mentor, Palika Houston, we were looking at my grades and just what we wanted to do, and we looked and it was possible for me to graduate in December and enroll in college early. And the University of Oregon was on a quarter system. So that means, they have a start in January and then they also have another start in March at the middle or the end of March or whatever for their spring term. And so as we started looking at it, and I took my ACT, I scored what I needed to score. My GPA was so high, I took my ACT, I think twice, and took SAT once just to have the scores. But going there, it was down to 4 schools for me initially. I had to stop taking scholarship offers at the start of my senior year in high school at Montbello High School in Denver, Colorado. They came down to Washington, Cal, UCLA, and Oregon. And I took a trip to each school, and this is back in the day where you couldn't take unlimited trips and your family couldn't come with you unless they were paying for their own plane ticket. So I'm dating myself and I sound old now, but it was a time where just things were different as I took all my trips by myself. My favorite trips and my best trips out of those trips were Oregon and UCLA. So it came down to 2 schools that now that I'm 36 years old, I look back and to know that both of those schools are in the picture then, and then I've been to both of them now is really surreal. But at the end of the day, it came down a lot to stats. And I went to UCLA and it was a great game. It was sunshine. It was like 75 or 80 in December, and they were filming a movie on campus. And USC or UCLA beat USC that year. I think knocked them out of the national championship. So like it was the game to be at. And then on the other hand, I went to Oregon on my trip, and they played the University of Arizona. They got their butt kicked. It was raining the whole time. Probably the best thing about the trip that I would say and that I tell people is that I had this sourdough bread bowl of clam chowder at the game that was just so good. I was like, man, if I come here, I can have clam chowder all the time. But that's how bad the game was and the atmosphere was. But the thing about Oregon is it felt like home. It felt comfortable. I felt like the everybody was genuine from the people that were taking care of me as recruiters. My boy Jeff Eberhardt, and then also my boy Josh Gibson. It just felt right. And I talk about this thing called God's wink, and and it just means that you're in the right place at the right time. And we were driving up this mountain, and my not my host, but he was like the person, my liaison that was showing me around. He starts playing his music and he plays this one song, Pop My Trunk by Wino or I think it's Swaying by Trey the Truth. It was one of those two. And he plays it in the car and I'm like, you listen to this music? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, this is your music. And he was like, yeah. Back then we was on MySpace and Black Planet, so I'm not sure that they could peep and check out like my music, my music genre. But I was like, I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and somebody plays this song that I listen to a lot of down south music, and this only the song I listen to. Like, I'm like, all right, I think God's trying to tell me something. So just after that whole trip, when it came down to UCLA and Oregon, my dad, he's all about education. He wanted me to go to UCLA. He knew that degree would set me up for life. But I was like, Dad, I'm kind of trying to play football for a good football team. Like UCLA had a black head coach around then, Carl Durrell, but I kind of knew he wasn't going to be around for my whole career. So I didn't want to go through a coaching change. But also I said it came down to stats. And me and my high school receivers coach, we looked at stats A's leading receiver. No, Oregon's leading receiver was a wide receiver who had like 78 catches, 10 touchdowns, like 1,000 yards. So I'm like, okay, that's great. And UCLA's leading receiver had about 60 catches, maybe 7 touchdowns and like 700 yards, but their leading receiver was a running back. So I was like, well, how is your running back your leading receiver when you got some receivers that you should be throwing to? So essentially, when it came down to everything, it came down to stats, and just Oregon was the place that I felt most comfortable. And that was also at the same time the year before I went, or a month before I signed. A month later, we ended up getting Chip Kelly as our offensive coordinator, who then became my head coach my junior year and led us to a lot of success. So we just recruited some really good guys, and then I just think I was just in the right position at the right time. Trusted my mentor, trusted the people around me to guide me, and honestly, it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life. That that's correct, and the best way I could put it is just like even if you're hooping, if a coach tells you that you're gonna be able to take 10 to 15 threes a game, and you show up to that game and they just feeding the post, then come on, coach, don't lie to me. I want to go play somewhere, but just tell me I'm gonna have a lot of assists. Then don't sit here and tell me I'm gonna be able to shoot threes. Mhm. And that's what and I'll sorry, I'll say one more thing. And that's why it's important for you to be able to be in the process as well, to just, you just can't come in just as far as with your head in the ground and believe in everything a coach tells you, because you got stats you can look at, you got film you can look at. If they tell you that we're going to throw the ball 50 times a game, and the times that you've watched them play on TV, they run the ball 50 times a game, then that probably doesn't match up. But I just had a coach who, and like I said, my coach and my mentor, who really sat me down and we looked up the stats. We looked up the other receivers that they were recruiting. Even if they said we're only taking one receiver this year, we saw that there's already another receiver committed. So, like, there's that they want you really bad, but also like you're making the best decision for you, your family, your career. And so don't be blindsided by things that could potentially happen. And I'm upfront as possible. I just want to be upfront. I know that sports isn't that way, that some people are greedy and they're going to do what's best for them. But when you move the right way, you get rewarded for that. I say the biggest thing is, a lot of people say, and they look at football or basketball or whatever it is. And so, football, the season is from pretty much August to like January. And a lot of people say, hey, we had a great year this year. And they're looking at the games and they're looking at the scores. And that's an indication. But honestly, the real work is put in from January to August. That's where you get your nucleus. That's where you get your chemistry if you're a wide receiver and a quarterback, or just chemistry as a team in a whole. That's where all the hard work is put. And the thing I'll say about Oregon is, from my sophomore going into my junior year, during that offseason, I saw like a switch get flipped. I was still younger at the time. I wasn't really starting yet, but like I'm a real observer. I'm a Capricorn. I'm a quiet guy. I'm reserved. I'll sit in the corner and be able to tell you everything that's going on at the party. But just watching all our older guys, like there was a high accountability rate. And it was whether you're watching our DBs, like when we have summer practice, and I know you know this as well, like there's sometimes in the offseason the coaches can't come and coach you. Like they can't coach you, like it's against the rules. So you guys have to do a lot of player-led stuff. Hey, we got open gym. Hey, we got 7-on-7 at 4 p.m. Like everybody be there. And when you look around and all your teammates are showing up, it's a good thing. It means people want to be there. It means people want to work. It means people want to get better. And the thing I noticed is that we had a couple DBs on the team, and all of them went on to have pretty successful careers in the NFL. and they would, whenever they weren't on the field, they would just do push-ups on the side. And if they dropped the interception, they would do push-ups as well. But like that was the standard for them. They were trying to get like 100 or 200 or 300 push-ups within our 7-on-7 practice. And they were, of course, it's about, curls for the girls and looking good and being able to flex and stuff like that. But it just lets you know the underlying thing. It was like, man, how can we have a higher rate of accountability with what we're doing? And there were just a lot of people showing up. There weren't, I can probably count on my one hand, like the people that were problems or trouble getting them there or just didn't want to be there. But there was this switch that got flipped, and we hadn't won. At the time, we hadn't won a Pac 10, Pac 12 championship until way back in 95. And so it was 10 plus years since we had even been to the Rose Bowl. And for us being at Oregon, that's like the pinnacle. That's the best bowl game you can go to. That's where you want to end the year at. And you want to be able to hoist that trophy and bring that back to your school. And so I really felt that there were a lot of people that just poured in player wise. I always felt like we had the coaches. We always had great continuity, and there's coaches that had coached at Oregon for 20, 25, 30 years. But as far as players, I think we had to start telling ourselves that USC wasn't running stuff in this conference anymore, that we were finally there and that we finally arrived, but we have to put the work in. And that's one thing we did during that offseason and then during those couple years at Oregon for myself that I really noticed when we started to turn the corner. It definitely did, and that's what happens with building great culture, and then also just having great leadership. It's hard. It's sometimes you walk into a team and there's a lot of young players, and like I said earlier, people are trying to figure out what leadership is, or I don't want to be the one that's forcing people to come in the weight room. I don't want to be the bad guy in quotation marks that makes people have to come here. But when you talk about sports, you got to do extra. You got to do more. You're doing a lot inside the sport, but there's nobody that I worked out for the 2 hours that we were supposed to work out today and then I'm done. Like, what are you doing extra to chase that person who's ahead of you or that team that's already ahead of you that's been where you're trying to get to? When you get to that next level, you have to work even harder. And I speak about it from a undrafted free agent perspective. I was a guy that came in, they didn't pay me any money as a signing bonus. They barely bought my plane ticket. I was about to have to get on the Greyhound all the way from college. I'm totally kidding. But what I mean is like, you're low on the totem pole. So like you're expendable, you're a person that's gonna do the stuff that you're gonna be on the scout team, you're gonna be on the look team, you're gonna be the person that they might not even know your name. They might not even call you by the number you have. And so as I came in, I'm watching a lot of guys and I was a football junkie growing up. So I'm seeing a lot of guys that I watch on TV that I know. I know their stats, I know what college they went to, I know where their hometown is, like I know how many Pro Bowls they've been to, like everything. And then now I'm on the field with these guys. And so I have to look at myself and I'm like, well, am I really supposed to be here? Like I know I'm undrafted, like so that means not to say nobody wanted me, but they didn't think I was valuable enough to spend a draft pick on. And so I'm here and I'm on this Falcons roster, but like, am I supposed to be here? Am I just here for a couple months and they're gonna get some work out of me and then I can go home and start my career, my job is whatever that is, or like, do I really belong here? And so you look around and I talk to my clients a lot about talent because a lot of my clients have a lot of talent, but a lot of them try to ride by on that talent. Like I said, not putting extra work in or not fine tuning their technique or their mechanics. And the person that works hard is going to kind of catch up or surpass that person with talent at some point in time, just because they've had this relentless work ethic. And so as I looked at guys like Julio Jones and Roddy White and Tony Gonzalez, like pretty much Hall of Fame people, and Matt Ryan, who was a quarterback at the time, I'm like, oh, I got to bring my A game, and so I'm a little bit nervous. I'm also like, all right, don't mess up, like because you're in here with the ones or all that type of stuff. But the biggest thing about the NFL is consistency. The people that are consistent, and I saw the most consistency not from the guys who were super talented, but from the guys who have to fight for their spot every year. From the guy who's like the third or fourth receiver, but everybody knows their name. The whole crowd knows their name. The fan base knows their name. The coaches know their name because they'll show up and they'll do whatever. So pretty early, I learned that in college, but also when I got to NFL, there's people you can carve out your niche in the NFL. You want to be a special teams guy and you play on the special teams and you bring energy and you make tackles, or you're the dependable guy that you know that you'll step in and it will, like, there's not a step that's lost or a drop off between the first team and you. So it's really, you look around and it's a numbers game, but you say, what am I willing to do to stay here? And at that time, I was like, it was never, my dream was never to, I didn't say I want to be a starting receiver in the NFL. I said I wanted to play in the NFL. And so that's a lot of what anything could be: tackling, catching balls, blocking, whatever it has to be. That's what I said I wanted to do. So I try to find every reason and every avenue to be able to do that. It didn't happen till I was in the thick of it, because of course the draft, and then this year was weird because there was an NFL lockout, so there technically wasn't supposed to be any football, and it was the one time in 20 or 25 years that there's been a real physical lockout where there's no football or no football activities. But it didn't happen until I showed up in Atlanta, and then the same year I came to Atlanta, they gave up draft picks and got Julio Jones. So those people that don't know, it's kind of just like if you had a Michael Jordan, hollow rookie card that was signed or something, and you might have, got it because you gave away, five of your other valuable cards, but you spent a lot to get it. And so with Julio coming in, we play the same position. So even if I'm really, really great, they're not going to play me over a guy that they're paying a lot of money and spent a lot of capital in. So you look at the wide receivers, and there was Julio Jones, there was Roddy White, there was Harry Douglas, there was also Kerry Meyer, who was drafted a year or two before me. And then so you start looking at it, they only carry 4 or 5 receivers. So what are you going to do to stick out? And our special teams coach used to always talk about it, and he'd be like, there's only one football. They're like, we got Julio Jones, we got Roddy White, we got Tony Gonzalez. How you think they got time to throw to you? And so that was an inkling that opened up my eyes a little bit more to say, all right, I got to figure out where I can fit in and where I can get on this team and where I can make a difference. And I have a bigger body type, so like me, blocking is probably the easiest way. And then also, like, I love tackling, and I'm pretty like a hybrid when it comes to being able to make a play or tackle on special teams. And so at that point when I was with Atlanta, it was more so like, how am I going to stand out during these practices? And that might be taking scout team reps and running down full speed and showing energy. That might be where you sit at in the meeting room. And am I sitting right by the coach where he can see how engaged I am in the film, how he can see me writing down notes as he's talking, that I'm listening to what he's saying. And those are three of the biggest reasons. And then also, like, am I on time? Like, one big thing that a lot of people don't really realize, or a lot of my younger players, is even though you don't think a coach notices, like, they notice. So if you're the last one that comes in the weight room, even though you're on time, they know that you're the last one. If you're the first one that comes in there 15 minutes early and you're always the first one that's there, they know that and they take note of that. And it just speaks volumes about you for what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. If you're that person that shows up and puts work in when you don't need to or have to, people take a little mental note of that when they talk about people that are doing the work or just putting in the time. And so those are like some of the smaller things I did. I made sure my name wasn't on any of the bad lists, the person that missed this or was late to this. Those are the simple things I did. But just as far as being out in practice, I just took every rep that I could, whether because it's scout team. There's a lot of people that don't want to go. There's people that's hiding in the back of the line and fake like they're tying their shoe. They act like they're getting checked out their elbow by the trainer. And so I would just anytime reps popped up or they needed somebody, I would just run in there. And I didn't ask. I didn't sit here and wait. I just did it. And so it led to me being kind of looked at as a guy that was like, man, let's see what this guy can do if we put him in the game or just give him a spot. Percent. One of the biggest trends I see people need help with, one is confidence and courage. Some people are paralysis by analysis. They'll sit there and tell you everything that can go wrong about a situation or what went wrong in the past and why they're afraid to launch something or to put something out or it's not perfect yet. And so we self-sabotage a lot sometimes, as athletes too. We're really self-critical on ourselves, and I learned this in acting school and I've done a way better job at it since I left. No, you can watch somebody perform and they do an excellent job and you go up and you tell them, "Hey, great job today, man." "Oh yeah, but I didn't do this right and I'm trying to do this over here and I didn't quite get this line right that I wanted to do." So we automatically like discredit, the praise that's given to us for doing something good to the point that we never really accept when people give us, even a compliment. Sometimes I've been guilty of this. "Hey man, nice suit." "Oh, this whole thing? Oh, it ain't, just got this from the back of the closet. Like it ain't nothing." So like instances like that, I try to be more just upfront. Just say thank you. Just shut up and say thank you and keep moving, keep it pushing. Save your negative comments for yourself. But the confidence and the courage is the biggest thing because they just think, and I say this generation with instant gratification, they think, oh, I want to play basketball. I want to be the next Steph Curry. And then they think they're supposed to go out there and the threes are supposed to go in the bucket. They think that, I'm supposed to go out for this sport and I'm automatically supposed to start or have a 1,000 yards receiving or put up a 50-point game. And when it doesn't happen for them within those first couple games, those first couple practices, when it looks and feels hard, they kind of want to be like, yeah, maybe this sport's not my sport. Maybe I might need to go over here and pick up a racquetball or paddle ball and get into this new thing over here. And so they're not spending enough time with it to even know if they're good, to know if they really want to work doing this. And so that's the biggest problem I go up against where I'm trying to convince them to stay, not convince them because I don't want to make it sound like I'm like, but I'm trying to let them know like, yo, if you want to do this, it takes work. Anything that you want to do in this life is hard and it's going to take work. And if you can't do this right now, it's just going to carry over to something different when it gets hard. Working at McDonald's or working at an ice cream shop or when you start your business. When the time gets rough and the sales aren't coming through, are you like, all right, well, this business thing wasn't a good idea. Let me switch. Because then you're just going to be spinning plates the whole time. So that's probably the biggest thing with this generation for me is just instant gratification. And then when it comes to this, just the inside the just athletes or just people around this age of high achievers, like I said, we're too hard on ourselves. We don't give ourselves grace. We've had a lot of accomplishments, but I'll be like, what have you accomplished in your life? Oh, nothing really. And I'm talking to guys that played in the NFL, made Pro Bowls, NFL MVPs, or just all this different type of stuff. And we just downplay a lot of what we do. One, because we want to protect other people that we're telling it to because they might have not done it. But also for us, we're still kind of shaky and our identity on who we are and what we kind of want people to know. And so a lot of that's, like I said, building confidence and courage to not be afraid of our story and afraid of what we've done in life, but to lead with that and kind of give that to other people and have them be the judge on how they want to respond to it because that's not our job to do that. Work on self-talk a lot. Work on self-talk a lot. One of the very first things I do with my clients when I get on a call with them when we first start is I tell them to, hey, write down all the negative stuff that you say to yourself. And then they do that. And then, all right, what's next? All right, now write down all the positive things you say to yourself, and then they do that. The time they spend writing that what's negative or how they talk to themselves badly is a lot longer than the positive things they say to themselves. And then I get them to say that whole list, and they say 30 things that are bad to themselves, and they got four things that they say that are good. So one of those key indicators for me is you don't even talk to yourself for the way or for the results that you want. And like I said, that goes back to us being hard on ourselves, but we know how to talk to ourselves, and we know the worst things we can say to ourselves to make us feel bad, and we can say the best things to ourselves that make us feel good. And so I really have them look, and one big thing I talk about is I talk about concrete language. As Americans and as humans, we kind of do this thing where we always down what do you want to where you want to go eat? Wherever you want to go eat. Or oh, those are cool. Or just, or I think, or maybe, like those types of words. So when I'm dealing with my athletes or even high performing individuals, I have them speak in concrete language, which is, hey, what are you going to do today? I'm going to do this. Or now I'm going to try, not gonna, I'm going to attempt, I think. And when I start doing that and then pairing that with positive language and positive reinforcement and self-talk for what they're doing, for them, for the first couple weeks, they feel weird. And I'm like, yeah, because you've never talked to yourself this much about these types of things. And so once they start doing it, yeah, it feels weird, but it feels pretty good to give yourself the best compliment you can give in the moment. That's either going to help you get rid of a bad play that you had or congratulate you on something that you did really, really well. Because like you said, we have to downplay when we do really well sometimes. Because if you do that for a coach, he's like, what do you want? A cookie? Like, you did what you were supposed to do. You pick and roll. Like, what do you want, bro? Like, good job. I've been teaching you that for weeks on end. Like, yeah. And so just it's just crazy just how much the way we talk to ourselves and the way we don't talk to ourselves and the way we don't build ourselves up, but yet we kind of expect other people to do it too. So I tell people we got to start with you. I'm not working with anybody else but you. So we got to start with how you talk to yourself. And once that list of the positive things you say to yourself gets way longer than the negative things, then we can start the real work. I'm probably the worst person to ask about this because for me, sometimes they just mesh. Like, and that's what I tell my athletes or people. I was like, don't just say this while you're playing your sport. Don't just say this while you're working out. And that's why we practice finding characteristics. So instead of saying I can't do this, you say I am strong. Like, I'm strong. Like, I can endure. You say stuff like that. Don't just say that when you're on the treadmill. Say that when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror. Say that when somebody cuts you off in traffic, because Lord knows you want to say some curse words that the God don't want to hear from you, but they on the tip of your tongue. But how are you practicing that in different situations to the point that it's just not when you get to your sport that you're saying that? It's just not that you're dealing with your family when you say that. It's not that when you're around your friends that you're saying that. But all these different situations that you use it is very important. But just self-talk and affirmations for me, they kind of go hand in hand, and so I'm not the best person to ask about that because when my clients ask me like, how should I say this or how should I do that? Well, how do you think you should say it to yourself? I'm not the one to sit here and tell you exactly what you need to say to yourself in order for it to hit for you. There's a way. I just went through a client the other day where I said he was struggling. He was a hockey player and he was just struggling to find he was just finding he couldn't find a way to let go of a bad play. And he said these words to me, and I'm probably going to use this as my example moving forward. And they clicked for me and how I would do it for me. And I waited for him to kind of apply it to himself. And I said, "Hey, do you mind if I give you some advice, or can I tell you how I would do it if you were me, or how I would do it?" He was like, "Yeah." I said, "I'm a big kid. I like cartoons, I like cartoon movies, and when you say "Let It Go," I couldn't help but think of Elsa and Frozen. So I said, I said, and I'm singing it. I'm not just saying it, but I was like, would a quick word for you to bounce back would it be able to be say Frozen? And he started singing the song, and then he found the line in there that he really liked, and that's the work that I love to do. And so sometimes we make these things super complicated, where we're like, dang, what would I tell myself to bounce back from this, or how would I do that? And sometimes it's just what we need that'll snap for us and that we need it in the moment. And so that was my example for him. But whatever works for you as an athlete, as a person, whether that you feel that that's affirmations, whether that's self talk, weave it in, make it make sense to you, make it feel good to you. That's the thing I want you guys to do. When I was in high school, I was since the age of 8, I knew I wanted to be an NFL player. And so I put a lot of things that I did at the 8, not just at the age of 8, but just if you saw me or found me at any time, I was doing something football or sports related. I played football, baseball, basketball growing up, played baseball first. If I had to say loves, I say I love football and baseball the most. Baseball being over football, honestly, because it was the first sport I played. But when I got to high school, when it was getting more real for me, and I knew my parents didn't have money to pay for me to go to school, I knew my best chance to go to school was going to be through an athletic scholarship. And so when I was playing and we had got a new coach, his name was Oliver Lucas. He was just an awesome person who came into my life at the right time. And he was a godly man and the things he talked about. But he pretty much just said the work has to match up with what you want. Don't tell me you want to be an NFL player, but you're over here smoking weed. Don't tell me you want to get A's in class, but you're over here ditching every chance you get. And so with me, he was like, if you tell me you want to go to college, show me everything you can that lets me know you want to go to college. And so for me, as I was playing in high school, if I wasn't, if we were in the off season, like you knew after school, we lifted more for either 4 or 5 days a week. So you knew after school, I was in the weight room, I was in the gym. You knew in the summertime, I would come in the weight room in the morning, I would go to my job at Big O Tires, and then I'll come back in the evening for running. Like I was doing three things at that point. So I was pouring in everything I had. And then even in the off season, I'm getting up. My coach was coming to pick me up on Saturdays and sometimes Sundays. And we're going to other parks around the neighborhood. We're going to Aurora Central in Denver or in Aurora, Colorado. We're going to Cherry Creek. We're jumping the fence to get into the facility to go practice. Like we had a security guard trying to kick us out, and my coach was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, man, this is an all-state receiver right here. We just came in here to get some work, man. You mind if we just stay in here for an hour?" Like that's the type of drive, and like you got to jump a fence to go practice and to voluntarily practice. Like so, it took having a person like that with me to show me that. But for me, like that's all I wanted to do. And so it was this relentless just chase on how can I get better? How can I get bigger? How can I get faster? How can I get stronger? I already had the talent. I just didn't want to get passed up from not doing the work. And so that's what I did at the high school level. And it followed me in each little area of my life. But that's why you see me up now. I get up at 4:35 in the morning sometimes to record a podcast episode, or I'll check some early emails and try to get started with my day. I'm at the gym sometimes at 4:30 in the morning, getting my workout in and back home by 6 to start my day with work. So it's this sense. And my high school coach used to say it. My high school coach, Palika Houston. We were practicing one time and I didn't really want to be there this day. And it was super early. And he always like mumbles stuff under his breath. Coaches do this thing. Coaches know this mental warfare, these mental gymnastics that they put on us sometimes. And I heard him just say under his breath to nobody in particular. It's only me and him out there, by the way. And he said, "Man, the person on the East Coast already got their workout in." And so in my mind at that age, I'm over here like, man, it ain't my fault. I don't live on the East Coast. Like that's their problem to worry about. Like good for them. But then as I thought about it more and I got older, it wasn't that they're in that location and I'm here. It's like there's always somebody that's working, probably even before you. You know, there's somebody that's getting up earlier than you. There's somebody doing more than you. So what are you going to do in this moment to go catch them? And so that was my initial like, and we were already had been working, but those that was the instance of me starting to work even when I didn't want to. You know, even when, like you said, when you're tired and you're kind of like, man, I'm not feeling this. I can just pass up on this post this one time. Nobody's going to notice. But that's where the work happens. That's where the magic happens in that instance. And so, across all the platforms of just being an athlete and just kind of getting into this, I always try to bring my best hardworking self with me. I know how dangerous I am when I work really hard. I know I'm a great person. I know I'm funny. I know I'm charismatic. I know I'm tall, dark, and handsome. Like, those are the things I tell myself for my self talk and my affirmations just to let people know. But I roll with that stuff in every situation, and it helps me because working hard is never not going to be good for you. You hear a lot of people tell stories of, I wish I spent more time doing this, or I wish I would have put more effort into this. But you don't hear anybody saying, man, I worked so hard. I wish I would have did less hard work. You hear somebody studying hard for a test that got an A plus plus. You never hear them say, man, that test was easier than I thought it was. I should have studied less. I should have studied enough to get an A minus or a B plus. Like you never hear that. So bring the effort with you wherever you go because it's going to amount to something great. And as athletes, we know what it's like to be in these pressure or challenge filled situations where we have to bring our best self. And we are able to be successful because of so much preparation time that we put into that. And so just keep bringing that with you. As I crack my knuckles, how much time we got, Angela? We got an hour? How much time? I got you. So just when it comes to that, I'm really big, and I talked to my friend about this on his podcast, the Deep Cover podcast with Omar, a couple days ago, and he brought up New Year's resolutions, and I was like, I don't really love those too much, and I told this story about a college teammate who told me like, if you want to do things, don't wait till the beginning of the year. Like, find a way to start in the near future and just do it and just begin. But I know New Year's resolutions are a big thing. I know the New Year's for time to people to reinvent themselves. Just as a coach, I tell people just start small. Start small with obtainable things. Like if you're trying to lose weight this year, don't put the end goal is losing 50 pounds, but what is the goal for this week? What is the goal for this month? And then also being specific with it. I have clients that are like, hey, I want to get bigger. I'm gonna go to the gym this week. And I'm like, okay, how many times are you gonna go to the gym? I don't know, like 3 or 4. Okay, cool. What days are you going to the gym? I don't know, just like when I get out of school earlier when I feel like it, and I'm like, okay, well, like I need you to tell me specific dates and specific times that you're going to the gym so that you can hold yourself accountable. So when that alarm clock goes off, it's not, I want you to let me know what exact time you're going to get to the gym. I want to know how long your workout is. The more specific we make it, the more real it is for us to keep it obtainable. So when I say that, I want to say that and give you guys some leeway, but I also want to say, if you say I'm gonna work out every day of the week and then you miss one day, you've automatically lost your goal or you haven't completed it. So then you kind of feel bad for yourself. So make obtainable goals for yourself. Don't hold too much pressure on yourself to get these every time. Give yourself some grace, like I talked about before. If you say you're gonna work out 4 times a week and you miss one workout, just tack that on at the end of the week and get in there on the weekend and do it. But just small obtainable goals and steps to get there, and then also just dream and shoot big. We have this thing sometimes where we're just like, I don't want to set this goal too high because I might fall short. You can always adjust it at any time, whether that's the first quarter of the year, whether that's mid year, you had some family stuff happen, like life happens and we have to give ourselves grace with that. But aim big. And I'm guilty of this. Like I'll go ahead and share it on this podcast. I sometimes, when I talk about and do my vision board for the next year, I'm always hesitant when it comes time to talk about money. And of course, I want to make six figures in a salary year, but I don't never put a specific number that I want it to be. I just say six figures. And so if I get to 100K, like we made it good, we good. But this year, and I'm letting it be known on this podcast, not trying to stun or anything, but next year or this year, as we sit in 2026, and I got to start saying that because, yeah, my goodness, um, the goal is to make 5K. That's the goal. If I fall short of that, so be it. But like I've never said that out loud. I've never put that on paper before. And so this is me being vulnerable here in this situation and saying like I got a lot of things that I got in the works this year as far as more public speaking and things like that. I want to chase these things more, and I have to be more real with myself and aiming high and surprising myself. Like I might make that and then might turn it up to 500K next year. I don't know. But I never did it, so I never know what I'm capable of. And so now I'm dreaming bigger and I'm putting my goals out there and I'm telling more people. I'm really protective on who I tell stuff to. And I would tell you to be that too. But also trust one or two people that you know have your back, that can hold you accountable, that can ask you about these things and that really care about you because they want to see you succeed. So those are some of the biggest pieces of advice I have for 2026. Awesome. If you'd love to connect with me, I love to connect with you. You can go to my website, drewjaydavis.com. It'll have everything you need to know on there. There's a contact page that you can submit. We'll get back to you within about 48 to 72 hours. And then outside of that, on all major social media platforms, IG, you can find me, same name, Drew, Jay Davis. And then you can also listen to my podcast and give me a 5-star review that I would greatly appreciate as we continue to go. We're almost at 100 episodes right now. But that show and that podcast is called Too Good to Be Drew. You will see a nice big face of me on there, smiling and looking beautiful like I usually look. Orange cover, looks great. But outside of that, those are the ways to contact me. And if you love to work with me, we'll see if it's a good fit. And then I'm also just doing a lot more public speaking. So if you want me to come talk to your team, your school, give a graduation commencement speech, I'm open to a whole bunch of stuff in 2026, and I can't wait to dive into